Well, welcome back to another episode of the Second Floor Podcast, recorded and produced by the Delaware State Senate Republican Caucus. My name is Matt Revel. I'm the Communications Director for the Caucus. And here with me and us today is the Senate Republican Whip, Brian Pettyjohn. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Good.
I wanted to start this off, a little bit of a fun fact. I was telling some folks earlier today, and I remember this as a Sussex County boy myself, listening to 93.5 The Beach, right? I think is what it was. Many of you have probably heard of Matt Walsh. He's a popular conservative commentator, works for Delaware Wire.
Daily Wire.
Daily Wire, not Delaware Wire. That'd been interesting if
Yeah,
he
really.
started that. But anyway, so he got his start, at least to the best of my knowledge, as a disc jockey with 93.5.
Yeah, on the Matt and Crank show.
Yeah. Later transitioned to WGMD, which is a local talk show station down in Sussex County. But anyway, he tried to enter the elected official realm of public office by running for mayor of Georgetown.
Yeah, in 2010.
Who beat him?
I did.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a fun race. Matt and I, talked a couple times. We met and, just kind of get an understanding of why each of us wanted to run. But, in 2010, he ran for mayor of Georgetown the same time I did. And I did defeat him. Yeah.
I think it worked out well for him, though.
It did, yeah. I think it worked out well for both of us.
Yeah.
But it was 430 to 25 was the vote.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if he sees this, congratulations. Anyway, and to you.
Yeah.
So kind of just go right in, meat of this program. Wanted to talk about a topic that we've been talking about a lot over this entire General Assembly, or the beginning of this General Assembly, is the electric vehicle mandate.
Right.
Obviously, our listeners and viewers know DNREC, Department of Natural Resources, proposed a regulation at the end of last year via executive order, which was instituted by the governor actually in March 2022. Long story short, it would adopt California's zero emission vehicle standards. And again, long story short, by year 2035, would make it so consumers in Delaware could not purchase a new gasoline or diesel powered vehicle under 14,000 pounds.
Right.
All that out of the way.
Yeah. Bottom line, a lot of technical stuff there, but really what it means, it's the Advanced Clean Car 2 standards, model year 2035, which is really calendar year 2034. 100% of the new vehicles that are sold in Delaware have to be zero emission. So, right now the zero emission vehicles are electric.
Right.
That doesn't mean that if, I know Toyota is developing some hydrogen engines right now, that could enter the marketplace and that could be a substitute for it as well. But right now it's electric. And that's really, it seems to be what the focus is right now, especially with some of the legislation that's been passed by the majority, that they're moving in the direction of electric, which it was interesting.
So over the course of the past, this entire General Assembly, but dating back to late last year, there were various town halls that were hosted to raise awareness about this mandate, to solicit public input, both by DNREC but also by predominantly the Senate and House Republican caucuses here in the General Assembly. Well, the public comment period for that particular regulation closed on May 26th. And so our caucus and Senator Pettyjohn, yourself and our staff, really dove into the numbers. We tallied everything out, and the numbers that we came up with were surprising, I guess, in a way. We a little higher than what we had anticipated. And so there were 4,799 total comments submitted. But what kind of took us back a bit, the number that was opposed was 93.5%, or 4,487 of those comments submitted were opposed.
Yeah.
Only 320 or
It-
312 rather support.
Yeah, and that was a surprise. We were thinking it was going to be about 70-30 opposed to support. When I was going through, I did all the way up to the month of May, tallying myself just to kind of see where we were, and then the staff did the month of starting May 1st until the end of the public comment period. But looking at the numbers as they were coming in, I was really surprised as to how it was trending, and also surprised since I was looking at the comments to see whether they were supportive or opposed. I read a lot of them in their entirety, and it surprised me the number of people that had electric vehicles that were opposed to the mandate. Of course, there were some that had electric vehicles. They love it and they think everybody should have it. But there were a good number of people that started off with, I have an electric vehicle, I love my electric vehicle, but I don't think this is something that should be mandated by the state because it's not for everybody. And that surprised me, hearing from electric vehicle owners themselves that we were getting this type of pushback.
And so that really kicked off, well, like you said, there was just a lot of public feedback, obviously overwhelmingly opposed, folks from all political stripes. I mean, it wasn't just Republicans or just conservatives.
No.
Like you said, there were some more liberal-minded folks that were within the public comment tally there. But that had the House and Republican and Senate Republican caucuses introduce a couple pieces of legislation. More towards yours specifically with Senate Bill 96.
Right.
What exactly did that bill, if it were to go through, what does it
Well,
do?
the bill, the intention of Senate Bill 96 was to stop DNREC from promulgating or passing the Advanced Clean Car 2 regulation, the zero emission vehicle regulation. It said they can't go anything above Advanced Clean Car 1, which is what we're under right now. So it stops them from taking this next step that California has and going to Advanced Clean Car 2, which is the elimination of internal combustion vehicles, really 14,000 pounds or lighter by 2035. It stops them from doing that.
So it had a committee hearing, what was it, June 7th, so last Wednesday, the date of this recording anyway. What was the outcome of that?
It didn't make it out of committee, and I'm not surprised. But I will say that all of the questions that the committee members had, there were answers to. There were good answers to. There were legitimate answers. These weren't answers that were, that we came up with out of the ether. They were talking. They had questions about the availability of zero emission vehicles. We had responses for that because we had gotten information from car dealers showing that consumer demand for these vehicles is very minimal. They have these cars that are sitting out on the lot for months. There's one particular dealer that had an electric vehicle sitting out there for almost a year that hasn't moved. We were able to show that if consumers wanted an electric vehicle, dealers were able to order them and get them into the customers. We were able to show that all of the concerns that DNREC was using to push it, such as Delawareans can't get them. Well, yeah, they can. The bottom line is Delawareans don't want them. If you want one, you can get it. If you want a hybrid vehicle, you can get it. But the demand for them is non-existent. So what this regulation in fact does, it doesn't enhance the availability of these vehicles. It forces consumers, families, individuals, businesses in Delaware into a decision that may not fit the needs that they have for transportation.
And the House, similarly, the House introduced, Representative Mike Ramone introduced a piece of legislation which you were to co-prime on the Senate, House Bill 123, which would allow DNREC to promulgate these it would allow them to go forward with it, but only if the General Assembly approved it.
Right.
Similar situation to Senate Bill 96, it did not get out of committee. I know you had made a point, I believe, in a previous forum. in which your bill would essentially codify public opinion.
Yeah, it would. Public opinion's against it, and the results of the public comment are one thing. There were 2 polling firms that did public opinion polling on it. One on behest of the Cesar Rodney Institute, and then another, surprisingly, on behest of the centrist Democrats of America. So, the Cesar Rodney polling, yes, it showed, I think, about 70% opposed, I believe it was. But surprisingly enough, the polling that was done by the centrist Democrats showed very similar results. That the vast majority of Delawareans, it's not just a bare majority, but a vast majority of Delawareans do not support the electric vehicle mandate. They want to be able to make the decisions for transportation that are reliable, that fit the needs that they and their families have or their businesses have. And the public sentiment for this is extremely low, which is also reflected in the sales of those types of vehicles. When dealers have them on their lots and they can't sell them, that's a big indicator that the consumers don't want them.
Right, right. And our caucus has been extremely consistent in this, and there's been a lot of misinformation spread out there about what our opinion on this is. And you've been very consistent. Senator Lawson, some of the others within our caucus, has been very outspoken. So look, if electric vehicle fits you and your family's needs, do it.
Yep.
Right? I mean, I've joked myself, well, not joked, I mean, I'll tell people whenever Tesla releases their Cybertruck, I'm going to be looking very, quick. I mean, but I don't haul a lot of stuff. I don't, I'm not using a lot of the capabilities of your standard, I guess, gas diesel powered truck, right? So an EV Tesla, that's a truck, because I do have to use, sometimes would fit me and my family's needs.
Right. And yeah, I mean,
and you're
I'm
a Jeep
not,
guy now,
yeah,
right?
And I'm not opposed to electric vehicles as well. And I do believe, honestly, that we are going to move in that direction. But we're going to move in that direction naturally as the capabilities become better of electric vehicles, as the reliability, as the technology improves, as charging stations and the time to charge becomes better. And as charging stations become as ubiquitous as gas stations, I think we're going to move to that point. But for government to come in and put their finger on that scale and force things to happen when the market, when technology, when consumers aren't ready for it, that's where I have the problem with it. For most of my transportation needs, yeah, I think an electric vehicle would be great. I'm just not convinced yet of a lot of those factors. And, just to underscore that, my wife and I went down to South Carolina over Memorial Day to visit some friends that have moved down there. And, we stopped once on the way down and once on the way back to fuel. Fueling takes, 7 to 10 minutes, if that's even, going into the gas station and grabbing some chips and some water and stuff like that. Right. I actually went over to some of the people that were sitting in the charging, stations, and I had a little conversation. I'm a state senator, our state's thinking about adopting. They're like, "Oh, well, that's great. I don't think it's a good idea. We didn't realize that on our road trips we do have to be sitting for an hour, 20 minutes, hour and a half, charging our vehicles, and that adds a lot of time to our travel plans." Those are some real world type of feedback that you're getting from electric vehicle owners. There was one that said, "Yeah, we planned it. We're not in a hurry to get to where we're going. We built it into our travel plans." But there are some that I could tell it was their first time with a long drive that didn't realize the additional amount of time that charging would add to their travel.
Well, I mean, look, so DNREC has about a year, right? Well, less than a year now, but they have a year in order to decide whether, from the time that the public comments close to whether they actually go through with it.
Right.
We'll be sure to keep everyone up to date on that, especially if there's news one way or the other that comes out. But, the fight's not over.
No.
Regardless.
Yep.
Well, another topic that, Senator, you've been very invested in over the past couple of years, a lot of our constituents and folks around the state they look forward to annually. I think you actually get around this time of year, like, hey, where are these numbers?
Yep.
Or numbers that you get from the Statistical Analysis Center regarding the amount of firearm charges that are dropped
Right.
or nulliprost.
Yeah.
Well, you've got that information now.
Yeah, I did. And, thanks for bringing this up. Several years ago, when we were talking about kind of the first round of big gun bills that were being proposed, I was curious as to what we were doing, because the question always is, well, why make new gun laws and if you're not prosecuting and convicting people of the existing laws that are on the books? So I thought that was an interesting question. I'm a data guy. I'd like to quantify what we're doing and get a good idea of what's actually happening. So I requested from the Statistical Analysis Center the several different firearms charges within Delaware Code and what the disposition of those charges were. So the latest update for 2021, out of all the firearms charges that I requested, and it's possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, possession of a firearm by a person prohibited, possession of a concealed deadly weapon, and some others. Total for 2021, there were 4,324 charges that were filed. But the interesting breakdown out of this, 3,200 of those charges were dismissed. 74% were dismissed. So we that used to be kind of the only visibility that we had. 74% dismissed. Okay. But what does that mean? So last year I was starting to get more information about the reasons behind those dismissals, or the technical term is nollie-pros. They're not prosecuting those. And out of those numbers, we're starting to get some more detail. I think we still need a little bit more focus and detail on those numbers, but there are reason codes that when you dismiss or when you nollie-pros a charge, reason codes are entered, and that there's a key. If you want this reason, you enter this code in there, and we were able to start getting that breakdown of why these charges are being nollie-pros. So for 2021, out of the 3,200 that were dismissed, we've got people that are pleading to other charges under the same indictment, 1,400 of those. So a little less than half are pleading to other charges. We've got things like freezing code not entered. They just put it in there, dismissed it, but they didn't tell us why. Upwards of 420 of those. Pled to other charges, 373. Attorney General said nollie-pros, 169. Disposition in other court, 99. By the prosecutor, dismissed by the prosecutor, 26. Availability of victims or witness or attitude of victims, witnesses, we're talking about 70 of them. Insufficient evidence, about 150. Without prejudice, 190. So there's various reasons within that. But the bottom line is we're still dismissing a lot of these cases. And even if they are pleading to other charges within the same indictment, it doesn't tell me whether they are higher charges or lower charges. So, there's a lot of question as to what's happening with those cases. And unfortunately, with 3,200 nollie-pros, it's really difficult to go in and analyze each individual charge and each individual case to find out what's happening. I'd like to see some better reporting coming out of this, and whether it's a coordination between the Attorney General's office and the courts and the information that's entered into Delgis as to what the disposition of these are. I'm not sure how we can do that, but I think the people of Delaware deserve a really good analysis that we can produce every year as to what's happening, not only with gun charges, but what's going on in the court system as it is. Whether it's this, whether it's DUIs, whether it's people that are arrested and charged with burglary, robbery, crimes that are happening within the state. We see on social media arrests, but we don't necessarily always see what happens after those arrests. So I think in order to be able to quantify some of the issues that we're having in our criminal justice system with repeat offenders, a good analysis and a good system that we can get that analysis quickly without having to review each individual case would be something that's great for public transparency.
And again, you've been very consistent. So when these numbers come out, you do typically have the disclaimer that in the interest of justice, many of these are probably justified,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Definitely not all of them. Definitely, again, 74% of these charges that are filed are dismissed, and it kind of underscores the argument that our caucus has been making over the past couple of years that, look, if we just prosecuted a lot of these firearm charges, some of the violence that we see going on with firearms may go away, rather than passing pieces of legislation that, in our caucus's opinion, probably won't actually help.
You know, we see some of these charges are, and what I can do, I'll provide you with a copy of it. Maybe you can link it in the comments to this so people can look at the report. Looking at the number of possession of a firearm by a person prohibited. Okay, by a person prohibited. That means they're either too young to have a firearm, so they're under 21, or they have something on their record that prohibits them, that disqualifies them from having a firearm. So there's something, you know, they've got a firearm, they were found with a firearm, but they shouldn't have a firearm. Okay, so they're already breaking the law. Even if they don't commit another crime with that firearm, they're breaking the law by having that firearm, by possessing that firearm to begin with.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're putting other laws in there, which really, in the effect, is restricting the rights of people who haven't committed crimes to keep and bear or possess firearms. While at the same time, you know, we're seeing, you know, hundreds of charges a year where we're seeing people that already aren't supposed to be having a firearm on them, they have them already.
Well, I mean, look, so we'll definitely keep everyone up to speed on as we get more information. And staff's doing a deep dive in actually both of these topics, try to get a more in-depth, I guess, analysis of both the firearm charge dismissals as well as the EV numbers. So we'll, you know, as that starts getting formulated and getting ready for dissemination, I guess, into the general public sphere, we'll be doing that on all our social media channels and newsletters, things of that nature. So I should have put the disclaimer. This is going to be quite a nerdy podcast, right? all the numbers.
A lot of numbers.
Stuff.
A lot of numbers. But, you know, honestly, you know, numbers are important because you know, people can say whatever they want, but getting down to it and analyzing. You know, not necessarily doing statistics, because I just remember what one of my statistics teachers said about statistics, but analyzing the numbers and finding out the meaning behind some of the numbers that we're seeing out there is really important for us so that we understand what the real issues are, but for the public as well, so that the public knows exactly what's going on, how much of a problem we have, to be able to quantify, you know, where the issues are within our state.
All right, well, right on. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up.
Okay.
So obviously you can find Senator Pettyjohn on Facebook, Twitter. Just search Brian Pettyjohn. Look for a little blue check mark on both of those platforms. Actually, all three on Instagram as
too.
well.
Yep.
Follow us on our various social media platforms. That I think all of our handles are at DE Senate GOP. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, everything. Obviously, sign up for Senator Pettyjohn's newsletter.
Yep.
Link to that will be in the description as well.
Okay.
Senator, as always, appreciate you. I'd say stopping by, but we're in your office. So thanks for letting us use your office.
Certainly. Yep. Always great to be on this.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right. See you.